Comedian Jon Stewart is wading into some new territory, taking on a very serious subject in his first feature film. Rosewater tells the story of Iranian-Canadian journalist Maziar Bahari, who was detained while covering the 2009 elections in Iran and the protests that erupted around them. Here's a short clip from the film's trailer.
The election has ended in controversy.
What are you doing? Fighting back! You're gonna get killed, come on! You have a real weapon and you choose not to use it.
Iranian authorities accused Bahari of being a spy and imprisoned him for 118 days. WGBH arts editor Jared Bowen recently spoke with him about the experience and started by asking him what it's been like to relive it through this film.
To be here, to have made the film, to write the book, to write the Newsweek article, it's part of the same process. When I was in prison in Iran, when I was in my solitary confinement cell, or when I was even in the interrogation room, I always knew that one day I would come out and write a book and talk about what's going on in Iran.
How did you know that you would come out?
I just had a sense that, I would come out one day. I didn't know how long it would take, 4 months, 6 months, 4 years, 7 years. I didn't know when, but I knew someday I would come out. And I knew that I had a responsibility to talk about the situation on behalf of many of my colleagues who are going through the same thing every day in Iran and many other countries around the world.
Yeah, you had the advantage of having an international community clamoring for your release. How much of an impact did that have on your release? Do you think if you didn't have Hillary Clinton on one end and Jon Stewart on another, that you might still be there?
I think so. I think if there was not a campaign for me, I would still be in prison, or if my imprisonment would take longer. I think the fact that my colleagues in Newsweek and Washington Post, Channel 4 in the UK, and my wife had an amazing campaign for me, and that motivated many governments and many diplomats around the world to talk on my behalf, helped me a lot. And that is why I feel that I have the responsibility to talk about the situation of many of my colleagues who are not part of the international media, who do not have the same platform as I do.
I mean, what can you do for them at this point? It's illustrated in the film, and as you've talked about in your book, that there were people you worked with, people you know who were imprisoned when you left. Are you able to keep tabs on what their status is? I
think we are raising awareness about them. We have a website, journalismisnotacrime.me, in which we basically have an index of all the journalists who've been arrested in Iran since the beginning of the revolution. It's just that as a journalist, what I can do is to just raise awareness and to talk about my colleagues, to talk about the situation.
The cage rattling worked in your case. It led to your pretty quick release once the cry for your release became thunderous. Is there also a concern that it can have the adverse effect?
No. No one has ever been harmed because there has been a campaign for them. No one has ever been released because people have been silent about them. The Iranian government and many governments around the world, in Russia, China, Egypt, it doesn't matter they're US allies or they are against the United States, they always threaten families and colleagues of different journalists by saying that if you have a campaign for that person, his or her situation is going to get worse. That is a lie. No one has ever been released because people have been silent about them.
What kind of relationship did you have with your interrogator, Rosewater, in this case? I was thinking that throughout the film because obviously they employ different tactics.
I knew that I was fighting him in two different battles. I had the physical battle with him, which was lost from the beginning. He was bigger than me. I had a blindfold on, and I was a prisoner. He was the captor. But also there was a psychological battle. And that battle, I knew that I could be the winner because I was a more educated person than him. I had traveled much more. I was a more inclusive person. I was a more open-minded person. So I thought in this psychological battle, I can tap into my inner resources, in my cultural background, cultural experience, my family, my life experience that he did not have. Because that person, that interrogator, he spends his whole life in a small interrogation room, in a dark interrogation room, making a living by beating people, humiliating people, insulting people, lying to people, and I think at the end, and as you can see in the film, I was the winner in that battle at the end. I do not like to call people monsters or evil or monstrous because you cannot really defeat a monster. But if you regard someone as a human being, then you can see that person with the complexities of a human being. You can see that person with the vulnerabilities as human being. And then you can take advantage of it, not for altruistic reasons, but for very selfish reasons that, when I went on, talking about different experiences in my life to him, as you see in the film, I didn't do it because, philosophical reason or ideological reason. I told him those stories in order to stop him from beating me and then somehow maybe mischievously to torture my torturer.
And I just have to ask you quickly, also part of your arrest came from the fact that you had done a Daily Show segment that was very misinterpreted in Iran.
As a spy, I'm just trying to figure out why your country is so terrifying.
The first thing to know about Iran is that it is not evil. Actually, Americans and Iranians have a lot of things in common, more than they have differences.
How much of Jon Stewart's reasoning for making this film was feeling his own culpability for your arrest and imprisonment?
Well, he was not guilty at all. I could be in 2.5 Men and they would charge Charlie Sheen of sedition, of course. But no, I mean, they charged me with espionage, and in the absence of any real evidence to show me that I was a spy, because I was not a spy, they brought forward this ridiculous evidence, including my presence on The Daily Show.
Well, Maziar Bahari, the film opens in Boston this Friday. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.